Good evening, everybody. My name is Jarod A. Anderson. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Thank you all so much for joining on tonight, man. Uh, we have some good stuff for you all tonight, man. We've been really pushing it hard because we know what we're going to talk about tonight is really information that we all need to know. And so, like I said, just want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedule. But in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, welcome to the Work to Wellness to Wealth podcast. So, this is a part of a podcast that I just started doing. And my mission simply is to empower you with the information, the resources that you need to improve your financial health and overall well being while creating wealth for you in the next generation. So the main premise of it was just helping people get to a better state of health where their finances are concerned, and just understanding that your finances are at the intersection of every part of your life. So it's like the better you are financially, the better you're going to be in other areas that can help promote your health. So again, I am your host, Jarod A. Anderson, and welcome to the basics of estate planning. And so, like I said, you really can't talk about wellness if you don't have a plan for the assets and the things that you have. So really, this is a wellness conversation that we're having tonight, and wellness from the standpoint that if you have your affairs in order before you transition from here, you're going to have a much greater peace of mind. And the people that you leave here are going to have a greater peace of mind as well, because they're going to have clear instructions of what to do with all of your hard-earned assets and things that you've worked so hard for. So before I get started, let me read this financial disclaimer so we don't get nothing twisted here tonight. The information that we're about to provide in this webinar is intended for educational and informational purposes only, and should not be considered as specific tax, legal, or investment advice. For specific estate planning, tax, investment, or legal advice, please consult with a qualified estate planning, tax, legal, or investment advisor, or an attorney who can guide and instruct you based on your unique circumstances and legal requirements. I nor my guest, Ron, we are not attorneys and we are not financial advisors. We just sharing some information with you all that we think is going to be a benefit. So with that being said, let me bring on my special guest tonight, Mr. Ron Grider II. You all put something in the chat, whatever you want to do, just to show some love for Ron, man. Me and Ron, we go back, man. Oh man, how long have I, Ron? We know each other since about 2000 and
probably 2008, somewhere in that ballpark, 7, 8. It's been a minute, man. I feel like I've known you for a very long time. But man, I appreciate you inviting me. Appreciate you asking me to join you tonight. I love what you're doing.
yeah. So just to catch you all up to speed, like how did we get to the point of actually doing this? All divine, man. But I saw Ron a couple of about a month or so ago at an event, and I've been really doing my due diligence on just sharing information on finances and financial wellness. And I think, Ron, you saw one of my posts on Facebook, and man, we just started talking about finances and money and investment and started sharing ideas in estate planning. And during that conversation, I told Ron that I was interested or looking to do a will. And but I told him I was procrastinating on it, man. I told him like, yeah, I've been thinking about doing it for the last 3 years or so. And so, man, Ron got on me. He was just like, look, man, you need to go ahead and get that done. And so he held me accountable. And for that, I appreciate it. And I am happy to say tonight that I completed my will about 2 weeks ago. and it's a level of peace that came with that. It was a little bit, antsy, just some of the things you had to answer through, but after I got it done, I felt really good. So I'm gonna be quiet because y'all didn't come to hear me talk tonight. But Ron, what before we get started, let's see. Lake Miller said, "Hello, Ron. Looking forward to great information." And Lanita said, "Yay, thanks y'all for educating us, man. We thank you all for tuning in." So, Ron, I'm gonna hand it over to you. Tell the people a little bit about yourself. Anything that you think we need to know before we jump into this tonight.
Man, absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, thank you for having me on the show. I've been, following your podcast and just your material for a while, and anything financial literacy just it resonates with me. So for those people who are tuning in tonight and even beyond, my name is Ron Grider. I have been in the insurance and financial services industry for going on 12 years now. I've also been a teacher in my past as well. I was actually a middle school math teacher for about 5 years, and after coming to my senses, I realized this was not the anointing of on my life. So I said, let me just kind of go back to what I know. So I've been doing insurance and financial services for the past 12 years. But like you said earlier, I'm not an estate planning attorney, but I love all things financial literacy and beyond. So what I like to do is read, listen to podcasts, and really just kind of educate myself, as well as put those things in place that are important to protecting myself and my family. And having an educator's heart, I like to share that, especially with people that look like you and I, because we are such an underserved community. And I feel like sessions like this, like what we're doing now, more of this needs to happen, just so we can kind of move beyond not knowing the stuff that we just don't know. But yeah, that's kind of what brings me here tonight. And I feel like I'm in the Matrix when I talk to you, because I have to call you Mr. Anderson.
Come on, man.
So love being here with Mr. Anderson to talk about just estate planning and to just again educate the masses. That's why we do what we do.
Yo, well, we definitely appreciate your presence, and we don't take it for granted. And I'm an educator as well. I'm a school social worker, so you all know we're going to take special care to make sure we present this information in a way that's easy for you to understand and digest. All right, so let's jump into this, the basics of estate planning. So, Ron, I was thinking the first place that we could start is just defining terms. So we're going to approach this from the perspective like you've never heard anything about estate planning before. Now, some of you all are probably familiar with these terms, but we don't want to take that for granted. So we're going to start with that. But first, let's start with, these are some things that I've heard, over the years on estate planning. And Ron, if you could maybe help clear up some of these thoughts and possibly misconceptions as we get ready to jump into this. But when most people hear estate planning, they merely think is having a will. So that's one thing that I thought. It's just like, okay, if I have a will, I have an estate plan. That's one potential misconception. Another one is many people think that you don't need a will unless you have a lot of assets or a huge estate, like a Michael Jackson or a Prince or someone like that. What do you think? Is that true? Many people think estate plans only address issues after you die. So I only need a will or estate plan for issues. It only impacts me after I'm gone. And then lastly, many people believe you have to be a full-grown adult or near death before even thinking about a will or estate plan. So Ron, help us out, man. Are we accurate with that, or are we missing some things? So take the floor, man.
Yeah, well, let's start first with just kind of defining our terms. I'm an avid listener and reader of Dr. Frederick K.C. Price. May he rest in power. But one of the things that I love that Dr. Price always said is, before you begin any conversation or discussion, it's just good to define your terms. That way, you know what we're referring to, and you know what we mean. So let's just start with that word estate. To your point, a lot of people think, Michael Jackson and just all the wealth that he had, or, multi-millions of dollars that, I've just made throughout my career, that's an estate. So since that's, not my situation, I really don't need a will. I really don't need all that. Well, in its simplest terms, an estate is just any property or money that you own, bar none. That's it.
Whoa,
And
whoa, 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 whoa. And Ron, I might stop you a couple of times.
oh, go
Hold
ahead.
on a
Go
second
ahead.
now. So you're saying an estate is any property. So even if I just own a car, you that could be considered an estate.
Absolutely. If you own your car, your home, your clothes, your jewelry, your Jordans, your PlayStation, your baseball card collection, whatever property or money you own, that is your estate. So you may not be a multimillionaire. You might just be a thousandaire. You may just be a hundredaire, whatever the case may be. But I've talked to so many people in the past that say, "Oh, I ain't got nothing. I don't really need to do a will and estate plan. I ain't really got nothing." And I'm thinking, well, unless I drove past you this afternoon in a car, sleeping on the side of the road in a cardboard box or a tent, which I'm pretty sure that doesn't apply to anybody on this call. But unless that's you, that person could probably make the argument that they don't have an estate. But yeah, any property or any money that you own, simply put, that is your estate.
Wow, that's good to know. That clears up a misconception right there. Because when I think estate, I'm thinking this might be aging me, but Dallas and J.R. Ewing, and the whole South Fork estate, that's what comes to mind for me. But it's anything that you own. That's good.
Yes, sir.
What so there's a term like, well, go ahead. I'm gonna let you continue on.
Well, let's go a step further because you also asked about well, you mentioned probate. So let's talk about that. Probate is really just a legal process that takes place after someone dies. So when a person dies, there's obviously you get a death certificate. That death certificate goes to the probate court, and they literally probate your will. It's a process where a judge looks at your will, validates your will, and then allocates your property according to your instructions. That whole legal process is called probate.
Okay,
And
that's
I
good.
want to say this too, because a lot of times, there's a cost to that. You got legal fees that are a part of that. So during our lifetime, it's really important to focus on getting rid of your debt during your lifetime, because what a lot of folks don't know is if you die still having debt, what the court is going to do is they're going to, as they go through probate, they're going to pull from your estate whatever it takes to pay off as much of that debt as they can pay off. And whatever's left over is what goes to your loved ones and your heirs. So if your intent is to pass as much of your stuff to your heirs and your loved ones, you really want to make sure you pay your debt off while you're in this lifetime.
Okay, Rod. Okay, wait a minute. So, I'm not the fastest learner, but so you're saying even if I have a will, and I want you to go back and talk about like what constitutes a will, but
Sure.
even if I have a will that outlines exactly how I want my assets to be shared to my children or whoever, so you meaning that the courts can still come in and not necessarily fully honor that. Let's just say if I owe somebody money, they don't have to fully honor that will if I potentially owe people money.
Yeah, because that is still your debt, even when you pass. So that debt doesn't necessarily have to be paid out by like your children or your spouse or your beneficiaries, but it still has to be paid. And so what happens in a lot of cases in probate is they're basically going to liquidate your estate, or they're going to pay out as much from your estate as they can pay out to minimize that debt. And after that's done, that's when your heirs get what's left over. So yeah, so they're going to follow it. They're still going to follow those instructions, but they're not just going to automatically cancel your debt.
Okay. Okay. So I'm already thinking I don't want to have to deal with the chances with probate, but let's take a step back because now we're talking about probate from the standpoint of somebody who has a will.
Absolutely.
What happened and what is it? I know it's called institucy. I'm gonna let you do the term, but I
Man,
always have trouble with that word. But what is it if you don't have a will? And then what happens to your belongings? Let's just say how does probate work if you don't even have a will?
great question. Great question. So, and I'm gonna give you an A for effort because you were right. Like that word was on the tip of your tongue. But yeah, but all 50 states have what are called laws of intestacy. All 50 states have that. So intestacy is basically the process that a probate court is going to follow when someone does not have a will. So if you don't leave any instructions with where you want your assets to go and where you want your property to go, the court is going to make that decision. Literally, the government, the state will make that decision for you according to that state's laws of intestacy. And this is probably a good point to mention as well, where or to mention that a will has to be state specific. A lot of people don't know that. So some people have asked, well, can I just handwrite a will? And technically, yes, you can handwrite a will. I wouldn't recommend that because you want your will to align to the laws of intestacy for your, well, excuse me, align to the laws of your state. And if it doesn't, or if you don't have a will, they're going to follow the laws of intestacy. So I don't think I defined will earlier. And I don't want to assume that most people know what a will is. So let me kind of backtrack and go there. But a will is basically a document that you create that tells the probate court, the probate judge, how you want your assets to be distributed once you die, whether you want it to go to your children, nieces, nephews, cousins, a charity, wherever you want that to go. That's what the judge is going to follow when they validate your will. And in your will, you're going to actually name what's called some states call it a personal representative, but in most cases, it's called an executor. The executor is the person who the judge says, all right, you're going to carry out, you have the legal authority to carry out John Doe's wishes since he is no longer with us. They're the person that physically handles the logistics of making sure people get what you wanted them to get. That personal representative / executor. So, yeah.
Right. Is that the same as I've heard different terms of it? Is executor the same as a power of attorney?
Two different things. They kind of operate in a similar function, but there's actually a different word for that in a power of attorney.
Super.
Yeah. So we'll definitely get to that.
Okay. So let's put this together. So number one, having a will versus not having a will is going to determine how you interact with probate. In the absence of a will, so Ron, in the absence of a will, probate will make the decisions on how your assets are distributed to whoever.
Yeah, so probate, in the absence of a will, just to make sure people hear and understand kind of what we're saying tonight. In the absence of a will, probate or that probate court is going to follow the laws of intestacy for your state. So I'll use myself as an example, and I don't mind being transparent by any stretch, just to give you a little bit of my background on this. So what kind of got me into really studying how this process works was my own personal situation. So anybody who knows me knows, I was raised in a single parent home, only child. So let's hypothetically say Ron passes away today and Ron did not have a will. Not married, no kids, et cetera, et cetera. It's just me, myself, and I. And let's just, for the sake of this example, say I do not have a will. I live in the state of Georgia, and the laws of intestacy for the state of Georgia say, okay, well, if you had a spouse, we would just give your assets to your spouse. If you had children, let's say there was no, let's say your spouse was deceased, but if you had children, we'll give your assets to your children. We'll just split it in equal shares, give it to your children. However, in my case where I have none of those, no wife, no kids, just me, myself, and I, the state of Georgia says, we're going to chop your estate in half and we'll give half to your mother and we're going to give half to your father. Now,
so let me just ask this. So it doesn't matter what your relationship is like with your father. Doesn't matter if your father hadn't been in your life, if he treats you like a dog, that doesn't matter.
Does not matter.
Wow.
So when I saw that, I said, oh, Ron needs to get a will, because again, I like to your point, not growing up with that active relationship with my dad, I may not want to leave him my stuff. I may not want him to have half of my stuff, but if I don't have a will, my mom wouldn't even be able to come back and legally contest that because that's the law of intestacy for the state of Georgia. Hey, no wife, no kids. So mama, here's your half. Dad, here's your half. Sorry if the relationship wasn't there, but you should have had a will to tell us where that needed to go, where your stuff needed to go.
And Ron, I just want to highlight another part of that because in that example, you're going to be gone by the time this comes into play. So think about like if I was your mom and from day one, I was there, anything that you needed until your last breath, if your mom survived you. and then never heard anything, and it's just hypothetically speaking, but never heard anything at all from your father, and then at the time of your passing, if I'm your father and I let's just say, you did pretty well for yourself, which I know you're doing pretty well, but I just pop onto the scene and trying to think, ooh, how can I get a part of, this wealth that Ron has built? So think about how that would make that parent feel, but you're saying that there's nothing that your mom would be able to do about that.
Nothing. The law,
Wow.
the state makes that decision. So keep in mind, for those people on the call, when you do not have a will in place, what you are literally communicating to your family is, I don't want to make the decision of where my assets go. I'm comfortable just letting the state take care of that for me. I feel like the state can make better decisions than I can. So I'm just gonna let them deal with it. And I don't know too many people who want that to be the case.
So, Ron, we had a question, Miss Carrie, and I think you just addressed that. She said, "What if I'm a single person with no children? Do I still need a will?" Absolutely, for that reason that he just stated.
Yes. If you woke up this morning and you were able to put both of your feet on the ground and get out of bed, you need a will. You need a will. Single,
Um,
married, you need a will.
say that one more time. That just the way, just feet out the bed, foot on the ground. You need a will.
If you woke up this morning, put your feet on the ground and were able to get out of bed, you need a will. And you asked a really cool question at the beginning of the show. You asked about how is there such a thing as being too young to have a will? Well, in the state of Georgia, you can legally have a will at age 14.
Shut up.
Age 14, Georgia will legally recognize a will. So if you are at least 14 years of age and live in the state of Georgia, you should have a will.
I can't even vote, but I can have a will.
You can't vote. You can't drink, you can't vote, but you can have a will.
So that says that we can start having these conversations with our kids at a young age.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And I would recommend it. I would highly recommend it.
Okay. Man, Ron, this is good. If y'all have any questions, y'all drop it in the comment section. All right, Ron. So let's go on to the other parts of so we talked about the will, we talked about probate. Talk a little bit about the power of attorney power of attorney, and the advanced health directive. I know we hear those a lot. What do those mean?
All right. So when we talk about this whole concept of an estate plan, we hit the first part. We hit will. That should be the first thing that you have. The second thing I recommend is a power of attorney. Now, this is something that will kick in while you're basically alive. And what this does, well, let me back up. It will go into effect when you're alive or when you pass. It can happen both ways. But essentially what this does is it allows you to assign what's called an agent to be able to handle your financial matters. So if you need someone to be able to sign checks for you, there may be insurance policies that you might need to utilize or use to cover some things. That power of attorney will allow this person that you designate as your agent to make those decisions. If I'm let's say I'm incapacitated, I'm in the hospital, I'm in a coma, unconscious, whatever the case may be, but I'm still here. And I need bills paid. I need insurance, like I said, documents or insurance bills paid. I may have like some stocks or equities or securities that I may like to trade or deal with. That can all be assigned to my power of attorney. I may have tax transactions that I need to interact with or take care of. That power of attorney, that agent I assigned to my power of attorney, will have full authority to act on my behalf if I'm unable to do so myself.
So I'm gonna just take a wild guess here that you probably don't want to make that cousin who asking you for money all the time and never paying you back. You probably don't want to make that cousin your power of attorney. Ron, would you agree?
That I would definitely agree with that wholeheartedly, 110%, because this is pretty much someone you're giving the authority to sign your checkbook. If you have real estate transactions that you're responsible for, or let's say you were in the middle of, your power of attorney can do that. Now, I will also say you can delegate what authority you want your agent to have or not have. So it's not like an all or nothing. It's not hey, you signed everything over, so it's nothing you can do. You can be very specific about what you want them to be able to do and what you don't. But the advantage in that is here's someone who can legally stand in on your behalf when you're not able to do so to handle financial matters. That's the key point.
Yeah, so you want to make sure that you entrust that with someone who operates in integrity and who you trust can properly execute the desires that you put forth in the will. Ron, we got a question, man. What's my big bro? Uh, he said, "Where would I need to go to find out about our respective states' laws regarding the will?"
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question. Well, when you do your will, and I didn't know if we were going to get into this a little bit later, or I don't mind hitting it now. There's a couple of options. You do have a couple of options. The first place I would recommend someone start is at your job. A lot of companies now are offering free legal resources to their employees, and so let's say you go through these resources to create your will. They will ask you what state you live in, so that as you are kind of checking all those boxes and you're in the process of putting that will together, it's automatically aligning to your state's laws. So again, that is offered through some people's employer. Now that may not be everywhere, so I understand that. Another cool site that you may want to check out is called Mama Bear Legal Forms. They will allow you to do a will or a power of attorney, and it will be specific to your state. So that's an option. Now there is a cost to that. But I think it's pretty small. But if you're married, if you're single, they have both packages, regardless of which side of that fence you're on. They have the power of attorney packages as well. But again, as you're kind of completing that information, the first thing they're asking you is what state you are in.
So if you're not at that place yet, and I think what he's saying that even if you're not starting the process, is that information that's available online if you just wanted to do the research to find the laws?
Yeah. You can look at laws of intestacy. Like you can just Google laws of intestacy for your state, or just Google what your state's laws are regarding probate.
Okay, good. I think that's what he was getting at, but that's good to know. So everybody needs to do that. I mean, because we got to be informed. So from what I'm learning from you tonight, Ron, it's not even just enough to say, okay, I'm gonna just do a will, but you need to understand the specifics of how that's going to look in your state.
Yes.
Um,
And
all right.
scenario, let me just throw this in as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
There are estate planning attorneys. Again, there's going to be a fee for that, but if you really want to dive into the weeds and the legalities of it, you can always consult an estate planning attorney as well.
Okay, that's good. So do your due diligence for sure. All right, Ron. So next term, Advanced Healthcare Directive. This was an interesting part when I went through doing my will, and it made me think about some things. And I'll just touch on one thing, but it even asks, "Do you want to be buried or cremated?"
Yes.
And something that I never gave a whole lot of thought about. You just kind of automatically assume that everybody's going to be buried, but I've heard people who, because of the cost effectiveness, they was just like, "Oh no, we just gonna cremate this boy here because he didn't leave any instructions." So if you didn't leave the means, and this is important for yourself to be taken care of, you still have to think that's going to be a financial burden on somebody, because that's still going to burial and the casket, that's all going to carry a cost. So you may be in a situation someone may not be able to afford it, and they might just be like, well, you know what, let's cremate them, it's going to be cheaper, and they didn't leave any funds for us to take care of this. So there definitely something to consider. But Ron, talk to us about the Advanced Healthcare Directive. What does that entail?
So, advanced healthcare directive. Sometimes you will hear that referred to as a living will, because as it implies, these are instructions that you're leaving behind for someone to implement when you're still alive. Now, this has nothing to do with finances. This has nothing to do with property. But again, let's say life happens. Let's say I'm in a coma, I'm unconscious, or I'm just in a severe medical state where I cannot communicate to my doctors or to my healthcare providers what treatment I want to have. This is where that advanced healthcare directive is going to kick in, because this is where you literally detail out what preferences you have for your healthcare treatment. And what you'll actually find is that in a lot of cases, the doctor would come to the family before they actually, treat this person and say, hey, is there a healthcare directive? And if you say no, they're going to go to the little file cabinet and, behind the desk. They're going to pull out this template and hand it to someone in the family to say, hey, will someone complete this before we continue with our treatment? And they will give you a healthcare directive to fill out and complete right there on the spot. But you're absolutely right. There are some very hard questions to think about when it comes to just your health. Because one that automatically comes to my mind is, if I'm in a vegetative state, do I want them to just go ahead and pull the plug on me? Or do I want them to feed me, my nutrients and my food through a straw and do whatever they can to just keep me plugged in and keep me alive? Those are some questions that are going to get asked in that document. Those are some questions that a doctor will want to know. Hey, is the longevity of this person's life more important, or is the quality of this person's life more important? If we can't, if we can't resuscitate this person, if they pass, like you said, do they want to be cremated? Do they want to be buried? So having these questions answered and kind of communicated to your loved ones ahead of time, it just saves so much stress. It just removes all, because they're already going to be in a place where they're kind of grieving and healing and just concerned about you. You don't want to add stress on top of that. So now is really a good time to get all of these things in place. So again, those on the call, I want you to hear those 3 documents that we just talked about: your will, your power of attorney, and your healthcare directive. Those 3 components are a basic estate plan. That's a good foundation and a good place to start. And I'll say probably 95% of the population out there will do just fine with those 3 documents.
Man, Ron, this is some rich information, man. This is good. And we see things like this on TV. And I think when I was going through this process, one of the thoughts that it triggered with me is just like, man, if I was in a state where I was in pain or suffering, but I was unable to communicate it, would I want efforts to be utilized to extend my life? Or would I just want to be like, you know what? If I'm not strong enough to be able to exist or survive on my own, let me go. And so that's a real thing that you have to think about. But man, it's so good to think about this on the front end, because it's just like you're making decisions for your best interest and well-being now in the present. But Ron hit on an important point. It's hard enough when you lose a loved one and you're grieving and you're going through that whole process of mourning. But man, how often do you see, Ron, the added extra stress of how we gonna pay for this funeral? And we got to do a GoFundMe, and old cousin Shawnee that we ain't seen for 20 years popped back in the picture, and now she's at the probate hearing and she wants half of everything, and now you just got this big family mess. I'm gonna deviate real quick. I heard this story today, and this was an actual case in Georgia. It was a brother and sister who, whoever the person was that died, they had a little Tweety bird or something to that effect. And the brother, and not a real bird, just a play bird. And the brothers and sisters were so at odds with one another, they fought tooth and nail for that Tweety bird, just for the principle of it, to say, I'm not going to let you get it.
Wow.
And no will or anything. And the lawyer was even like, okay, I can get one off of eBay or Amazon, put it in the box, mix it up, and y'all can pick one out and you won't be able to tell the difference. But it was just like, I don't want him to be able to have it. So you got to think about these things. People get real petty when it comes to money and land and property and the assets.
They do. I mean, you would be surprised at how many families are just at odds and butting heads when someone passes away without a will, because like you said, that petty is real. It's a certain level of petty that you just aren't going to see while some people are here, that just comes out when they're not. So when you think about everything that your family's going through, especially, at the time of your death, right? They're like I said, they're grieving, they're healing. They already have so much on their shoulders. There is an opportunity for you to take to at least take stress off of their plate, so they can just focus on grieving and healing your illness or your loss. Because again, this is just another way of just showing your family how much you love them. And it doesn't take long. I think when you and I, when we kind of sat down and we were just kind of hashing some things out, I mean, I think it's probably safe to say 45 minutes to an hour max
Yeah.
of a person's life. When you consider how much of our time we devote to other things in life, whether it's trips or going out or shopping or going to
Watching a football game.
football games or watching my Falcons get cheated and robbed, whatever. You got 45 minutes to an hour just to show your family that you love them. You have that. We all have that. So my takeaway for folks tonight is, if you've been one of these people saying, yeah, one day I'll get that done, someday I'll get that knocked out of the way. No. Change someday into 2 day.
Come on now.
1 day into 2 day. You got 45 minutes to an hour to tell your family that you love them. So give your family your flowers or their flowers while you're here.
Man, that's so important. So to everybody watching this now or by replay, this is what we challenge you to do. Set a date that you want to have this done by. And listen, give yourself whatever time that you need. Now, don't make it like, well, I'm going to get it done in the next 10 years. Come on now. This is 45 minutes. So set a date in the next month, 3 months, 6 months, whatever, but set a date and hold yourself to that date that you set to make sure that you get this done. Because as you can see, the 45-minute investment that you make now to get this done is going to pay dividends in the way of peace of mind and just less stress for those who survive you and have to carry these out. All right, Ron, a few more things, man, and we're going to wrap up. So let's talk a little bit about beneficiary assets that don't necessarily have to be included in the will. So someone might be thinking like, well, if I have my retirement accounts or my investments accounts, do I need to go in that much detail and include that information in my will?
Gotcha. So anything that has a beneficiary already on it, like you said, let's say your 401k, your IRA, maybe your HSA, your life insurance, things like that. If there's a beneficiary already named, that will not go through probate. That does not go through probate. So we would call those beneficiary accounts. So you don't have to worry about any beneficiary accounts having to go through probate. That will pass at the time of your death. That will pass directly to the beneficiary that you appoint. So that's a really good question. Now, I will say, here's something that is becoming more common. And that is when a loved one passes away and leaves their home to their heirs. Like, let's say you inherited, grandma and granddad's house. Can that be passed down through a will? And it can. That can, we would call that real property, just like real estate. Your real property can be passed down through a will. But here's like a little nuance that you might want to consider if that's your situation. When you inherit a house, if you plan on staying in that house, no harm, no foul, enjoy that home. But let's say you decide, hey, I really don't want to, this isn't my dream home or my forever home. I'll probably just sell it. You can do that, but remember, homes have equity in them. That's basically income that you just received from your loved one. So now Uncle Sam is going to want a piece of that. And we call that capital gains tax. So let's say if you inherit a home through like a will, let's say that home goes through probate. If you ever decide to sell that home, you will have to pay a capital gains tax for the equity that you inherited. Now, there's a legal loophole around that more people are doing, and that's where you see this word trust come into play. Whereas someone says, well, I don't want to pass this down through my will. I'll just put this house in a trust. So that way it can go to, who I want it to go to. And that way, if they ever decided to sell it from that point, they don't have to worry about capital gains tax. So wills and trusts operate a little bit differently.
Talk about them trusts, man, because I've heard, and I've heard someone define trust or just helping to give a simple understanding of it. But I heard someone defining trust like a bucket where you can put all of your stuff, but it acts as its own legal entity. So it's not necessarily you, it's this trust. And so where they could come after you if the stuff was in your name, if it's in the name of the trust, then it's not connected to you. I know that may be an oversimplification, but talk a little bit about just the benefits. Now, you said something really important. I want to highlight this. So you said if you have your assets, your will, and everything in the trust, that you don't have to go through probate.
That's exactly right. A trust does not go through probate.
Come
So
on now, y'all listen.
let's kind of compare and contrast wills and trusts because there is a difference. I'll start with the one that's probably going to be the most impactful, and that's the financial impact. So let's start there. Um,
Okay.
let's say if Ron wants to do a will, I gave you kind of, like the mama bear legalforms.com, small cost, maybe $100-200. Again, some people can go through their jobs, get it done for free. So if you do pay for a will, it's probably not going to be crazy expensive. With a trust actually does have to be drawn up by an estate planning attorney. And as you know, once you have to, kind of get that legalized and specialized advice, you're going to pay for that. There's a price tag on that. So trust can be very expensive to create. I've seen some just north of like maybe $5,000-6,000 to create a trust. They can be expensive, but they operate in totally different ways. So let's start there with the cost. Now, what a trust is, for those people who don't know, like you called it a bucket earlier. I like that. I would agree with that. But a trust, we can also think of a trust as a fund. It's a fund. It's a document that an attorney draws up where you basically can take all the stuff that you own, the stuff that's in your name. You can literally scratch your name off of it. So you no longer own, those items, and you can put them in the name of the trust so that the trust now owns that property. So I can put my house, my car, whatever I have titles and deeds on. I can put those things in the name of the trust. So this trust now owns it. And you kind of mentioned from a liability reason. A lot of people do that, especially when they have a significant amount of assets, because they don't want to be a target. If I rear end somebody out there on 285 and they know, hey, Ron, you've been, accumulating all these assets. Ron, I know you got it. Oh, my neck, my back. I'm not just coming after you for medical bills. Like, I'm coming after you for a few million. I'm coming after everything you got. But guess what? If Ron has a trust, even if I'm guilty, let's say I did it. Let's say I rear-ended somebody. Ron doesn't own that car. So you can sue me if you want to. Go ahead and sue me. I don't own that car. The trust owns that car, which you wouldn't know.
Ron, you got my attention, man.
Yeah. And let me share this, because another nuance that kind of makes wills and trusts different is that, because a will goes through probate court, remember, when it goes through court, that is now public record.
Oh, yeah.
You could go down to the courthouse and pull somebody's will and just read everything in it if you wanted to, because that's
wait. Now, will is my personal stuff, my personal business. So you're telling me that our will is a public record that anybody can access?
Once you go through the court system, that is now public record. And that's what probate is. It's a court ordered process. So wow. Yes, so your will does become public record. So I know we kind of, tell people, hey, you kind of give me little stalker vibes. I don't need you all in my business like that. But if there's a will that's gone through probate, that's not stalking anymore. That's legal. They can look that up because it is public record. Trust, on the other hand, this is where they become a bit different, because a trust is a private document. Trust doesn't go through probate. So you probably wouldn't even know someone had a trust unless they told you. So that's another reason some people kind of do a trust versus a will, because they just want to keep their affairs private. They don't want everybody to be able to go and pull their stuff.
So we can't tell you what to do, but definitely look into it. At least understanding you shared some significant things that is making me think about trust in a whole different way. I mean, number one, I don't have to go through probate. Number two, I don't have to have any of my valuables or anything in my name. And basically, when I hear trust, it seems like an extra layer of security where my property and my assets are concerned.
Yeah, you could think of it that way. You can definitely think of it that way, as like that added layer of security or privacy. Some people will say that. But here's a mistake that I see people make with trusts. And I'm gonna go ahead and throw wills in there too. If you decide, hey, a trust is really going to be a better option for me, again, you can do that. That's a personal decision. If you can afford to put that together, by all means, do what you got to do. But remember, as you continue living your best life and you continue accumulating assets, let's say you buy another house, or you move into another house, or let's say you buy another car, let's say you get another life insurance policy, whatever, you have to remember to put the ownership in the name of the trust.
Oh,
New assets that you acquire, don't remember, if you don't put it in the trust, they're going to treat it as something that's going to go through probate because you didn't put it in the trust. So that process of putting, all the ownership into the trust is called funding the trust. That's why you hear that term trust fund, or someone's a trust fund baby, because you have to actively fund that trust for the rest of your life whenever you accumulate new property and new assets. So that's one thing to think about with a trust. Now, let me flip over to the will side. When you get a will done, and I've had more of these conversations than I probably would like to as well, where a person will sit down, they'll go through a whole estate plan. Like, all right, cool, Ron, I heard what you had to say tonight. I got my will, I got my power of attorney, I got my health care directive. Cool. When I see them, the next time I see them, I ask, like, hey, did you get, everything signed, witnessed, and notarized? Oh, no, I hadn't done that yet. I still got to do that. So, yeah. So remember, will, now here's where it gets a little tricky. A will, you have to have witnesses, and you have to get your will notarized. And depending on what state you're in, that determines how many witnesses are required. So, for example, here in the state of Georgia, you need 2 for a will. Yep. So you got to have 2 witnesses and, a notary to go ahead and make that will legal. Power of attorney, you have to have that witnessed and notarized. Your healthcare directive, you don't have to have that notarized, but I do believe you have to have witnesses for your healthcare directive. So I know people who have these beautiful documents in their possession, but they never got them signed, never got them witnessed, never got them notarized. So now they're just pieces of paper taking up space.
Man, Ron, that's what good. And you know what? One of my witnesses, I did it. I had 2 witnesses at the school that I worked at, and one of the witnesses that I used was our SRO, and it made him think. He was just like, you know what? I asked him, like, do you have a will? And he caught it immediately. He was like, no, but in the type of work that I'm in, I probably need to get one like yesterday, because there's no guarantee that I'm gonna, and he was just being real. It's like, there's no guarantee that I'm gonna make it home tonight. Yeah. So it just kind of shows how easy it is not to even really consciously think about it until somebody brings it to your attention, and you just really realize, like, man, tomorrow is not promised.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is real good. This is real good. One of the things that I really kind of hit home with me with this is definitely the healthcare directive, because my father, he eventually transitioned from dementia. And so luckily, well, I won't say luckily, but just from the wisdom of my mom, she made sure that he got these things in place earlier on in life, because he did get to a place where he wasn't of the mental capacity to make these type of decisions anymore. And so it took a lot of stress off of her, just to know that I already asked him what his desire was and to have that written out. So just another plug to just really encourage you all to take the time necessary to do this, because you never know what twist or turn may come at you during the course of a day.
Absolutely. I see a question in the chat, and I want to pull back to my academic days to see if I remember what that acronym stands for. But when you say SRO, isn't that school resource officer?
Give him $500. Ding ding. Yep.
Yeah. I remember the police officers that are there at the school, and we just call them resource officers. So I'm assuming that S stands for school resource officer.
Yep. That's what it is. School resource officer. Okay, Ron. So I think we're about to wrap up. So you already talked about where do I start at if I want to get a will? So your job is a great place to start. I think you said that, and you gave some websites, and also it's just good to talk to people that you know who have had one done, and they can probably make a personal recommendation to you, and they can tell you what their experience was like. And so as you begin having these conversations, it's no telling what type of new connections or doors that it'll open for you. Ron, I know we have found a person online that does a lot with trust and just the conversation. So I just said that to say when you really start focusing on this and having conversations, you'll be surprised of how you start to notice, like, oh, she deals with trust, like, oh, this is an estate attorney. So we just really want to keep your awareness, um, put this in your awareness system so you can start looking for these opportunities. Courtney got a question. Ron, you want to take that?
Let's see. She says, for clarity, is your trust protected from outstanding debts? Ooh, that is an attorney question. I am not sure. I'm not sure how that's handled in a trust situation. I can tell you what most people typically do, though, to handle those outstanding debts. And if Jarod has me back on another show, this is another topic, but life insurance.
Ooh, yep.
Life. A lot of people will do, Courtney, is they will make they'll make the beneficiary on their life insurance policy the trust. So that's how that would pay out. Your life insurance would literally pay into the trust, and you can have instructions in there to have that life insurance pay off any outstanding debts that you have. But it is, again, because the trust is private, a trust doesn't go through probate. There won't be a court order involved with the trust that's going to require your estate to be paid out. But again, as far as the specifics on how those debts get handled, I would probably refer you to like an estate planning attorney for that one. But I know life insurance is used to kind of take care of things just of that nature. And let me just add one other thing to that trust topic, because this is one thing I forgot to mention as well. A lot of people like to leave instructions before their heirs inherit, like, let's say, money or something like that. So let's say I want my kids to go to college before they get any of the money I leave behind, or I want them to take some financial literacy classes before they inherit any of the money I leave behind. You can put those instructions in a trust. You can have that added to a trust so that when you pass away, your personal representative or your trustee, the person is actually called a trustee who carries those wishes out, they'll know what to do and how to pay that out. A will can't do that. Once you leave something to somebody in a will, it's their property. They can do whatever they want to with it. But if you know, hey, I want certain instructions or directions to be followed before, little Johnny inherits this, you can spell that out in a trust.
Man, Ron, that's good. So case in point. So I have a son. He's 8 years old now. If I left for trust and I transitioned from here, I could leave instructions in that trust to, let's just say, my son won't be able to access this until he's 25. Or, if my son goes to college, I want the trust to pay him X amount of dollars every year until he finishes college. But if he drops out, then I can so you can go into that level of granular detail with the trust.
Yeah, that's why you want to get the attorneys involved. When you write that, they can kind of help you, word that the way that it needs to be worded so that it will pay out the way that you want it to pay out. And you bring up another good topic about having children, having minors. If you need to leave a guardian to your child, you can leave a guardian to your child in a will. You can include who you want to be the guardian of your child in a will. You cannot do that in a trust. To my knowledge, there may be a way to do it, but to the best of my knowledge, I don't think a trust will allow you to leave a guardian to your child.
Good information, man. Ron, this is so rich. So, Ron, as we head down the home stretch, what advice would you give to a person after hearing all this, if they're still hesitant about creating a will, or if they're delaying on pulling the trigger to get it done, or to hear you like, yeah, it's important, I'll get to it sometime, in 2025 maybe. What last words would you share to that person who's still kind of teeter-tottering with actually pulling the trigger to get this done?
Well, I'll start out by saying when I'm kind of going about my day to day and I'm driving, from A to B, whenever I pass a cemetery and I see all those tombstones in there, one of the things that comes to my mind is that the cemetery is full of people that still get into it. The cemetery is full of people that still saying one day I'll get it done. But of course, by that time it's too late. We everything that we're talking about tonight, this is not an if conversation. This is a when conversation.
Mm.
Because since the beginning of time, death has a perfect track record.
Come on, Ron.
We all going to go. So this is not an if conversation we are having. This is a when conversation. So I would say to that person, and especially, you and I, we're both believers, right? So I would say if someone is a believer, I would tell them, like, listen, before the Messiah left this earth, there's a reason why that New Testament is called the last will and testament of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
No, you didn't go there, Ron. No, you didn't go there.
If Jesus left the will, if he left the will before he died and went back to heaven, what makes me think I'm too good to have one?
Goodness, Jarod didn't put us in for Jesus. Goodness gracious. Okay, that's it. I'm done.
That's what I would say. So just show your family how much you love them by just knocking this out, getting this out of the way. Like I said, 45 minutes to an hour of your life is a small investment to just show your family how much you love them.
Man, good stuff. We got one more question from Joey. He said, "Would a trust supersede a will?"
So there is something that's called a pour over will that is inside of a trust. Again, an attorney drafts all of that. They will probably ask you if you have a will already before they start creating this trust. And if you do, then they're probably going to, what's the word? It's escaping me right now. It's not amend. There's a process where they basically kind of, for lack of a better word, they'll kind of like terminate that existing will and kind of make your wish, carry your wishes out in your trust and in the pour over will that's a part of that trust. But again, that's a great question. That's probably going to be more of an attorney question. But yeah, that would be my recommendation, is definitely consult a good estate planning attorney and let them know what you want, and they'll kind of work on how that's going to play out in your trust, if you want to do a trust. But again, I think a will is fine. I personally have a will. I think for 95% of the population, a will, healthcare director, power of attorney will do them just fine.
Drop the mic, Ron Grider. Man, this was rich tonight, man. I can't believe it's almost an hour. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap up here. So y'all, look, I'm gonna take my glasses off. I got y'all emails, and so I'm gonna be checking in with y'all to see where we at with getting that will done. So don't think this is the end. This is just the beginning. But definitely from, I'm being joking. I'm not joking at the same time, but it's good to have people to hold you accountable. And so this is important for our community. And so I'm going to keep in touch with you all, and just, as we hear more information, I'm going to share it with you all. Do your own research, but don't keep it to yourself. Share it with somebody, but act on it too. Ron, man, you didn't drop so many bars tonight, man. I don't know people, if they want to stay connected with you, if they want to learn more. Now, y'all believe Ron, this is his first time. He tried to tell me, I'm not usually in front of the camera. I'm used to
man. This is my first webinar, first podcast. I'm a behind the camera type dude. I'm not in the front of the camera kind of guy. So
hey, not anymore.
Yeah. But I definitely appreciate you having me on the show, man. I love talking about this stuff and just, man, helping the people, especially our people, because I feel like we are just so underserved. We need this more than anybody.
I'm right. You didn't tell me. Is Mom's on here tonight? She said, "Good job. I'm proud of you, my son."
Oh yeah. Look at Mom sneaking in there. I see her sneaking in.
Shout out to Mom. Mom, thank you, and great podcast. Thank you so much, man. This was just, I think Ron said, it was just all so organic. I mean, it was just a conversation, and one thing led to another, and everything just fell into place. So that's how we know that we're supposed to be here. Ron, if anybody wants to stay in touch with you, what you want to do? Drop an email in the chat.
And no judgment, because I get laughed at about my email address, but I'm gonna put my email in the chat. Yes, I still have Hotmail. Don't judge me. It does me just fine. It's not the only email address that I have, but I do use my Hotmail. So that's that. If you send something to my Hotmail, that's probably the best way to reach me.
All right. So you all capture that. Ron Grider, Those are two little eyes.
Eyes. I'm the second. So Ronald is my full government. Ronald Grider II at hotmail.com.
Cool beans. And for those of you who want more, information, stay connected with me. You can go to my website, and I'm gonna put that in the chat too. And join my email list. And I'm going to keep up with you all anyway. But this is my website. But I am a financial social work coach, so I'm a school social worker. But I got my certification in financial social work. So just helping people with finances from a health standpoint. And, we deal with all of the intangibles, not just the dollars and the cents and the debt and investments, but what about the attitudes, the programming, the belief systems, the money stories that you grew up with? So all of the psychology parts of money, I help deal with that. So I got a number of free courses, free resources, books, coaching programs, the whole nine. And that's on my website. So go and check that out. But that's it, man. So Ron, appreciate you, my brother. And this will be the first of many more conversations.
I put Mama Bear in the chat as well. The website to mamabearlegalforums.com. If somebody wanted to just kind of go online and check that out, I did put that in the chat.
Okay. Oh, and there will be a replay. Since we recorded this will be available too. So I'll probably send it out to everybody because I know some of you all may want to go and watch this again. So look out for this in the next day or so. And Ron, you got a Facebook page too, man. You want to share that with the people?
Yeah, it's just my name, Ronald Grider. Yeah, I'm on Facebook as well. So feel free to hit me up there. I do respond. So yeah.
Okay, and I'm on Facebook too, Jarod A. Anderson, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok. All right, appreciate you all so much for joining us. Had a great time tonight, and we will be in touch with whatever we decide to do next. Ron, thank you again, man, and we'll see you all later.
All right, y'all have a great night. Thank you.